where China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is visiting for 2 days of talks with his counterpart John Kerry and other U.S. officials. The foreign minister opened his visit with an appeal to, quote, open up brighter prospects for the stalled six-party talks over the Democratic People's Republic of Korea's nuclear program. For more on that, let's check in with Nathan King, who joins us live from the newsroom. Nathan.
That's right, Elaine. This is the beginning of over a week-long U.S. trip for Foreign Minister Wang, culminating with the UN General Assembly next week in his speech there. Ahead of that, he made a push, as you said, for getting the six parties back to the negotiating table over the DPRK. And then there's the ongoing mutual concern over what to do about chemical weapons and the crisis in Syria. In Beijing this week, a high-level seminar marking the 10th anniversary of the six-party talks over the DPRK. At that seminar, Foreign Minister Wang called for a resumption of the talks, and in Washington he repeated that call.
I believe it is an important time for the six-party talks to review the past, summarize the good experience, and open up brighter prospects for the future.
Recent positive developments like the reopening of the Kaesong industrial complex between the North and South and the reduction of bellicose rhetoric from Pyongyang have created a better atmosphere. However, the US and Japan have said they don't want to reward Pyongyang for its recent nuclear test and rocket launch, both of which are banned under UN resolutions.
China plays a very special role in addressing the North Korean nuclear challenge and in achieving our shared goal, the peaceful denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
The recent deal over destroying Syria's chemical weapons also dominated the discussion. There is a renewed push for a peace conference following progress on chemical weapons.
Ultimately, the issue of Syria needs to be resolved through political means. The Chinese side will continue to play a positive and constructive role.
But in very strong language after his meeting with Foreign Minister Wang, US Secretary of State Kerry rejected out of hand Moscow's view that Syrian rebels could have been behind last month's sarin gas attack. And he pushed for a strong resolution in the UN Security Council next week.
Now the test comes. The Security Council must be prepared to act next week. It is vital for the international community to stand up and speak out in the strongest possible terms about the importance of enforceable action to rid the world of Syria's chemical weapons.
China has repeatedly condemned the use of chemical weapons in Syria, but unlike the US, has refrained from accusing the Syrian government of using them. They've also not backed the Russian idea fully that the rebels. China instead has emphasized the need to settle the Syrian conflict through diplomacy. Kerry and Foreign Minister Wang will both be in New York next week. Elaine?
Well, Nathan, what exactly does the U.S. want from China over Syria at the UN next week?
You know, it's that not taking a stand on who actually launched the chemical weapons that I think Washington feels it has an in with China in. Let's look at the history of the last 2.5 years of the conflict. We know the Security Council have been divided. Russia and China on one side, the West on the other, 3 vetoes. They think that possibly because this is about chemical weapons, that even if the Russians don't go along with the resolution, they could maybe get an abstention from China. That might isolate Russia on the Security Council. Now, we're not there yet, but remember, the US has kind of dropped this language from a draft resolution referring to the use of force in full. Instead, it would be under Chapter 7 of the United Nations, which would be enforceable by force eventually, but it might mean that there would have to be a second resolution or an agreement between the Permanent Five before that happens. Meanwhile, complicatedly, Washington still reserves its right to strike Syria at any time if this chemical weapons agreement is not implemented. So they do feel there's a bit of wiggle room with Beijing going into next week. We'll have to wait and see.
All right, Nathan King reporting live from our Washington newsroom. Thanks for that.
Thanks.